Hey, what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth again. This video, we're going to do the what's next on Joe Joyce, the undefeated heavyweight contender. Joe Joyce has busted himself in his last two fights. He's busted himself right in the mix of the overloaded heavyweight division, and he's a player now. He really is. He's a serious player at heavyweight. And he's coming off I think it was July 17th or the 24th, it might have been. He took on, what was his name? He took on Carlos Takam and walked away with a hard-fought 12-round, a 6-round TKO victory. I'm sorry, guys, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, he beat Carlos Takam by TKO when the fight was stopped. From most people feel a little prematurely, but he did land a big punch and was on him. And when you're not throwing punches back, you know, that can happen. Some of these referees are overly cautious, and they're supposed to be, and they can make or break the fight by stopping it like that. And you know, Takam landed some good shots early, but Joe Joyce weathered the storm and fought through it, and is now, you know, inching closer to a world title shot. 1 second. So the big question now is what's next for Joe Joyce following that win. So he is number 10, and you know, I do have him tied for 10th right now. So let's run him through the top 10 and see what possibly could be rolling, if he could possibly be in line for any top 10 guys next. So we start with number 1, the undefeated Tyson Fury. Fury, the WBC champ. No chance of this one next. Fury's fighting Deontay Wilder in October, and after that he has his sights set on a possible undisputed title showdown against Anthony Joshua. So I don't see Fury giving Joe Joyce the time of day. Number 2 is Anthony Joshua, the unified heavyweight champ. Now, I know Joe Joyce would love this fight, but Joshua would not be interested anytime soon. He's taking on his mandatory and Alexander Usyk next, and then he would push forward towards probably the Tyson Fury showdown early next year. That's what he wants to do. So he's not going to take a step back in terms of names and fight a guy like Joe Joyce anytime soon. So no chance of those ones. Number 3 is a former longtime WBC champion, Deontay Wilder. Well, Wilder is fighting Tyson Fury next. If Wilder gets that win, he's not going to look at a guy like Joe Joyce. So I just don't see him taking on somebody like Joe Joyce. He's going to want to fight bigger names, stay in-house, and take on PBC guys, and I just don't see him going at it with a guy like Joe Joyce. So I doubt that fight is possible. Number 4 at heavyweight right now is Dillian Whyte. Now, this one's interesting, but I think, you know, it's a good matchup, and it's definitely a winnable matchup for Joe Joyce, but I think it's a fight that Dillian Whyte would probably stay away from. Dillian Whyte now needs, if he wants a title shot, he wants to fight one of the big 3 guys, he needs to not be careful. I mean, not be cautious and not fight good fighters, but, you know, he needs to choose the right guy to fight that he really is confident he can beat. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he doesn't think he'd be confident to beat Joe Joyce, but I think Dillian Whyte wants guys with more name recognition and he can make more money off of if he's going to take the risk prior to possibly landing one of the big trees in a title fight. So I just think Dillian Whyte stays away from a fight with Joe Joyce. I don't see it. Number 5 is Andy Ruiz Jr., another guy. Ruiz, you know, he's right around the corner from getting right back in title contention, and I don't think he's going to roll the dice against a guy like Joe Joyce. I just don't see it. Number 6 is Alexander Usyk. Now, this fight could be possible. If Joe Joyce locks up the mandatory number 1 contendership somehow in the WBO, and Alexander Usyk pulls off the upset against Anthony Joshua, then maybe these 2 guys lock horns. But I'm leaning towards the less likely, because if Usyk were to beat Joshua, I think there's probably going to be a rematch clause in the contract, and we'll probably see those 2 guys go at it again. But you never know. So we'll see. I mean, possible, but I'm leaning towards the less likely. Number 7 is Luis Ortiz. Now, I love this matchup. I don't see why Joe Joyce wouldn't go after it if none of the other guys in the top 10 want to fight him. Why not take the risk, you know, and take on the 41-year-old power punching real King Kong Luis Ortiz? Ortiz has only lost to Deontay Wilder, but he has a name. So why not roll the dice, take a chance, go at it, and see what could happen between these two guys. I think that's a good matchup right there. So we'll see. That was Joyce, or that was Luis Ortiz. Number 8 is former WBO champion Joseph Parker. I like this matchup right here. Parker's highly rated in the WBO, so is Joyce. Maybe they make a fight to become the mandatory number 1 contender. Because Parker, I know Derek Chisora, who we'll talk about in a minute, is not interested in a Joyce fight, according to Chisora, because he wants a rematch with Parker. Well, Parker did beat Derek Chisora, even though it was a close decision. You know, if Parker wants to become mandatory number 1 contender for the WBO belt, he probably needs to roll the dice and fight somebody like a Joyce, who's highly rated by the WBO as well. And I think the WBO will be glad to make this a mandatory title fight. So we'll see, but I think it's very possible we could see those two guys locking horns later this year, you know, sometime if they're both interested. It's a makeable fight. Number 9 is former world title challenger Michael Hunter. Michael Hunter wants opponents. Why not fight a guy like Joyce? I'm not sure he wants to do that after the way he backed out of the Philip Hrgovic fight. I don't know if he wants to take on somebody like Joyce, who's, you know, very talented, undefeated as well, and can bang. So it's one of those ones where Michael Hunter would definitely have to be interested in the fight, and I'm just not sure that he is. So we'll see. And then finally, tied for 10th is Derek Chisora. Now, Joyce and Frank Warren are all down to make this fight happen, but it was Derek Chisora's people that came out and said they would not be interested in this fight. They want a rematch with Parker. So we'll see. I wouldn't completely rule it out because Chisora is down to fight anybody. If Parker's camp is not interested in a rematch, maybe then Chisora and Joyce could be made. But for Joyce, he has to keep chipping away, trying to get one of these guys in the ring. I think his best chance possible, would be maybe Dillian White, but I really think that's a reach right now. I think he needs to start at number 7, Luis Ortiz. There's Ortiz, there's Joseph Parker, and there's Michael Hunter, and a possible fight with Derek Chisora. I think those are the ones right there in the top 10 he should go after and see, test the water, see if any of those guys would be interested. I think he needs to try to make it some kind of an eliminator like for the WBO and see if any of these guys would be interested and possibly becoming the number 1 contender, setting themselves up. I think at least one of them would be. It's going to be interesting, but Joyce has a lot going for him right now. He needs to keep the ball rolling. So that's it. That's the what's next on the undefeated heavyweight contender, Joyce. I hope you guys enjoyed it. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.